It's interesting. Like in Europe, short course swimming is big. It's way bigger than it is in Australia and the US. When I raced in Europe, I got more recognized from my name, from my achievements in the short course pool than like significantly more than back in Australia.
Do you follow Ironman, Bobby?
No.
Oh, well, right.
I know a few people that do it, but no, don't follow it avidly.
No.
Are you into it now?
Yeah, I'm really into it. I raced the Hawaii Ironman World Championships a couple of years ago, so I was one of those that the triathlon bug bit me after swimming. So but hey, it keeps.
How do you think that converts after being a sprinter in your career into getting into that ultra endurance? We're not even talking like 4 or 5 minutes. We're talking a couple of hours. Well,
dude, that's a great question. First of all, if you're just joining us, thanks for joining Social Kick. We got Bobby Hurley, the voice of World Aquatics, on right now. Yeah, we'll just roll right into it. We've been having some fun doing that lately, but yeah, it was funny because like anytime I talk to one of my ex-teammates, I was catching up with Aussie Matt Target recently, and he was telling me about just asking questions. How is it that you turned from traveled around the world to swim 20 seconds to racing for 8 hours? Kind of the guy. Brett Hawk would say the same thing to me. So I just thought it was like, I don't know. But I think it's, what it is like, well, you are a really rangy guy, even though you're breaking world records in a 50, but to be able to swim up to the 1500, we put in so many yards. There's such a giant aerobic base that comes from swimming that it doesn't. Maybe that changes a little bit now. I'd love to see what the day-to-day looks like for somebody like Jordan Crooks, or I would think like Dressel actually still does like a good bit of volume, or at least when he was peaking. But some of these guys like Ben Proud or Flo, maybe not. We always had some of those purists, but for most of us, I think there was a pretty giant background. So even though I was a sprinter, I still think that aerobic base translate. Plus, staring at a black line for as long as we would, kind of gets you in the zone to be able to just put your head down in the bike trainer or something like that, stare at the road for a while.
Yeah, I think all the swimmers have that task-focused mentality to get through the training in order to perform in whatever event you're targeting at that time. But I think more like what Target said is a good man. Target, I've caught up with him a few times when I've been over in the US lately. But just the mentality to come from racing 50s and then now into that ultra endurance race, just not even the mentality towards training, but just towards actually racing and performing on that day is a complete 360 degrees, obviously. But yeah, as you said, I think a lot of those names that you said in terms of their training day to day now, it's not volume in the water, but there's still total hours of volume of training that's put into so many different areas. And so they're still training 4, 5, 6 hours a day, but it might only represent 2 kilometers in the pool or 4 kilometers in the pool, but they're still definitely putting in the amount of work.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just we become accustomed to routine. You really know a ton about your body, how to listen to your body and adapt to what it's telling you. These are skill sets that apply across different disciplines and different, distances, etc. So, yeah. Well, hey, man, we're excited to get to chat about, World Cup. You've been super involved in that. We want to talk about your swim career some too. I want to maybe start first by sharing that I think that we shared a meet together. So you swam at the 2008 Short Course Worlds. I swam at that meet as well, representing the U.S. We both medaled, I think, at that championships. And so cool to get to finally meet you after, 16 years later.
Yeah, really cool. No, Manchester, that was a lot of fun because my memories from that, which was my first Australian team, I think I was only 19 years of age, and that was in April 2008. So it was a week after our Olympic trials. So I missed the Olympic team there narrowly in a few different events, but I was pretty young, so I wasn't too disappointed, and was going fairly well in the short course pool at that point in my career as well, and flew over there and expected to probably compete with some bigger and older competitors. But in terms of the event in Manchester, that they had the Jumbotron for the first time, and it was like the the smoke machine, and you'd stand there and the doors would open in front of you, and it was individual walkouts for the first time for finals. So I thought that was, growing up as a big like WWE fan, I thought, wow, this is really, swimming's becoming sports entertainment here. Fireworks inside the arena when there was world records broken, and there were a lot of world records broken with the suits, obviously, that year. So that was that really opened my eyes to like what a world championship event can actually look like,
Yeah. Wait, who was your favorite WWE wrestler?
Oh, The Rock for sure, and the Hardy Boys.
All right, fair. I went to one of those as a kid. Before WWE, I went to the WCW one. Speaking of paths crossing, can't talk. Luke grew up with George Bevell, who was a teammate of mine, and I think you trained with at Michigan as well, yeah? Yeah. I spent about 2 years at Michigan, back into 2014 into 2016. So I got like I don't know what George was like in his early career, in his early days, but I got like the pointy end of George, the holistic view of absolutely everything. But, he was a good competitor on the World Cup circuit as well. Like 2012, he had a really good series as well. And just seeing the way he talks about things, the way he approaches things, he was the first guy that I saw that had a shower before his race and said, yeah, I'm good to go. And you learn so much of that on the World Cup. He'd put the kicker on one, dive in and do no dolphin kicks, and still go 21 mid long course. And it just showed me that there is a formula to get you towards the top that age groupers need to know and need to follow. But once you get there, everybody is so different. And if you believe in what you're doing, George definitely showed us that at Michigan and all the sprinters around him. If you truly believe in what you're doing, then the results can come from that. But his self-belief, and obviously medaled in the 200 IM years before that at the Olympics, his self-belief must be through the roof. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's your observation, Luke?
No, absolutely. And I remember I worked with him just before that. I remember him discussing how he should start his 50 free. And I was like, you know what, Luke, that's my strength. My strength is on top of the water. I'm just going to get up as fast as I can. I'm going to dive in and pop up as fast as I can. My strength is on top of the water, holding my breath and my technique. And I'm just going to work on that. And it reminds me of discussions like flow. Flow's like, my strength is my strength. So I'm going to work that, and truly believe, and that's what's best for me. And George had that complete obsession in knowing and confidence. You know what it was like before the blocks? He'd be like, when he was 16 years old, first Canadian national championships, everybody's doing the walkout. I don't see George Bovell anywhere. I'm his mentor. I'm taking care of him. He's behind the blocks just like half asleep. Just like this. And he gets up and slams it. I think that year he came fourth in 200 IM in the World Championships in Fukuoka. Like he was just so relaxed and confident in what he was doing before, so aware of himself. So yeah, those are the best swimmers you see it. That's when I see a swimmer being different, something different, like what's going on there? That's different. And those guys do well, man.
Yeah, I think it takes all kinds. It's about having the awareness of the self-awareness. At a certain point, you need to, it's not all about just following the program and trusting the leadership. At some point, it's about really knowing yourself, knowing who you are, what you need, vouching for that. And I think that's what you're talking about, Bobby. You start to see that kind of separation and individuality really manifest at the elite level.
Yeah. You see that more and more at the top end, and I got to see that with Chad Leclos and Cam Vandenberg when I was working with them in 2017 as well. And I thought I had a good mentality on race day, and I come up in the Australian system and was trying to tick as many boxes as I could and put myself in winning positions. But these guys, not just the physical talent, but the self-awareness and self-confidence that they had on race day was like another level. And you see more and more of that with the better people are. And that's why you hear Kieran Perkins winning the 1500 out of lane 8 and Grant Hackett doing it with one lung. And, what Bobby Fink must have mentally put himself through between heats and finals in Paris to win the 1500 in that event is just incredible. Like the mental resilience and like you said, just that deep down confidence that a lot of, I would probably say the male swimmers have, Olympic champions, is insane.
But it's also that I'm going to segue to the World Cups, but talking about George and you in the World Cup circuit in 2012, 2013, I remember his rivalry in 100 IM with Morozov and the late great Kenneth Toe. They just were going back and forth in that 100 IM nonstop, 51 zeros, 51 zeros, 50.9s. And they just love to race against each other. And you were like that as well. Your 50 back world record was at home in a World Cup. And then Marshall took it from you a couple of weeks later and also at the World Cup. And there's a lot of that back and forth. And we're seeing it right now. You mentioned Chad. You're seeing Chad and Trenton going crazy. And Chad's a guy who doesn't think about splits or pacing. Chad told us he decides to get up and just race. So talk to us about what's the true value and the love of the World Cup circuit? Is it the fact that you're getting like 9 races and 9 days of racing in 3 weeks with the same people and you can just race?
Well, probably the first thing that attracts you when you are winning medals at a young age is getting some prize money. That's always fun. But of course, like, you know, the World Cup circuit, this year is very different to what it was, 10, 15 years ago. We used to do in 2012, it was 8 competitions across 6 weeks all around the world. So I remember packing, there were 2-day competitions instead of 3-day competitions, which I think 2 days might be a little bit more of it's obviously a packed program. It probably makes heats not as quick, but you see more of the big names in the water back to back each night. And of course you're encouraged to swim more and more events, whereas now it's sort of not limited, but you really only need to have 3 world-class performances to get yourself up there. Whereas, we used to see Katinka do like 12 events, and we saw Chad and Malouli's undefeated World Cup tour that one year, just racing everything. But I first did it in 2007. So again, I was about 18 years of age or so. And that's when Randall Bauer went undefeated across all the backstroke distances.
I was just going to mention his name.
Yeah.
As an American, I always remember Randall Bauer doing that. And it was like this guy who he wasn't even at domestic meets. And suddenly he's like killing it at the World Cup. And you're like, where is this guy? And then he's at Olympic trials. You're like, what?
Yeah, I mean, not knowing the backstory of some of these swimmers, like, this is pre-social media and everything. You really only heard of the national team swimmers and the Olympic medalists and whatnot. And to see a guy like Randall Bauer, and he's 6'5" with a big barrel-chested guy, and I raced Arkady Vyachinen for the first time, and he's behind the grandstands doing squats on his ankles, and I was like, holy shit! Like, what is this thing? Like, I'd just come second behind Matt Welsh at nationals. I thought, okay, I'm going pretty good. My times line up well on the world rankings, but then just seeing it for the first time at that level just really attracted me to it. And obviously, traveling's a lot of fun. Having a different roommate at each stop, and then everybody's pretty much going along the tour without a coach either. So you learn so much about yourself, about what you need to do in that 24 or 48 hours to best prepare before a competition, how you recover from a competition. So I did so many of those World Cup tours without a coach, without massage physiotherapist as well. So you're doing pre-race warm-ups without a stopwatch. Like, you just realize what's important and what's not important. I think in Australia, in these high-performance environments, you can get a little bit too reliant on feedback from other people and having a support team around you to perform your best, when the sport these days and where it needs to head is seeing the best swimmers in the world racing, not world records or PBs every single week, but racing faster, more regularly, and on TV. That's where the sport can transition into something bigger. And, some of those names that you mentioned, like, in 2008, I broke the world record pretty early when I got my hands on a bodysuit for the first time. So I was pretty excited by that. And then that only lasted about 3 weeks, because we broke it in Sydney. And then the next week we went to Singapore, and I almost got Lochtey's 100-meter back world record. Oh. And I thought, we came up for the 50 back the next day, and I thought, all right, same with Noe Ponti now. I just need to do a PB and I get $10,000, right? How good's that? And then Randall beat me, and I was like, shit, I'm the world record holder, and I didn't even win the World Cup event. It's a little bit embarrassing, right? And then we went to Europe. So we went off to Stockholm, I think was the next stop. And Peter Marshall was in Singapore. I'm not sure what suit he was wearing, but I don't even think he medaled, or Randall and I beat him pretty significantly in the 50 and the 100. Then we went to Stockholm, like I said, and both of those guys were wearing TYR bodysuits. So this is the back end of 2008. And in the 100, Marshall just smash locked his world record. I think it was 49.3 or something, took about half a second off it and almost broke my world record in the 50 at the split. You know, so we turned like 23.1 on 23.2, 23.3 at the split, and my world record was 23.24. So, you know, I'm a 19-year-old guy going, okay, my world record's going to get broken tomorrow. Bal and Marshall are in bodysuits, potentially multiple bodysuits at that point. What can I do about it? You know, I've got to try and figure this out and compete with guys 10 years older than me. So, which I didn't do, but, you know, again, it taught me about what sort of mentality I needed to have behind the blocks to compete with guys that are 20, 30 pounds heavier than me, 10 years more experienced in a 50 and 100 meters backstroke. So, yeah, it was good. It was good to be a part of those races, and those tours in 08 and 09 were just electric because world records were going down left, right, and center. Didn't matter what lane you're in, whether it was heats, whether it was finals, whether somebody went 23.5 last week, they could go 22.6 next week. So that was probably the best thing about, you know about that, Brian, with Rome and the bodysuit era was, no, it wasn't right. And people were going too fast, but it was damn exciting.
It was very exciting. Yeah. Quick aside on Peter Marshall. I remember at the 2008 Short Course Worlds in Manchester, standing there with Lochte, watching Peter Marshall warm up, and he didn't know who it was underwater. He was just watching him do a start and do some underwaters. And he looks around at our team and he's like, who the fuck is that? He didn't know who it was. But it was Peter Marshall just warming up doing underwaters because, like, you know, he didn't travel that much with him, and Peter did a lot of short course swimming. So clearly, like, you know, and you were in this group of elite underwater swimmers, which, you know, bravo to you, especially for folks like George Bavell of the world who can't do a dolphin kick at all. But
just on that one in Manchester, I was 100 back was on the first 2 days. So I qualified third for the final, I believe. So I was in the middle of the pool. I was youngest in the final, and I thought, sweet, I went 51.1 PB in the semi. If I'm third, if I just go faster, I can probably be a good chance at getting a medal, right? And this is a field with Bal, Marshall, Tancock, Ashton Waldeborough was pretty quick at that point. So I'm in like lane 3. I do my race. I went quicker than the semi. I went 51.10 maybe, 51.1 low, and I got last. I went from third to last, and I went quicker from semi to final. Tancock wins from lane 8, and I thought, okay, like world champs is pretty wild here. Nothing's a certainty, and that was a big meet with. Remember Nathan Adrian winning from an outside lane in that 100 freestyle as well, and the waves are just bouncing off the wall in that pool. That was maybe the waviest pool I've seen.
Hey everybody, quick pause to say thank you for watching and listening to Social Kick. If you like this episode, give it a like. And if you like what we're all about, consider giving us a follow or subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, @SocialKickSwim. You know what to do. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, and we'll keep telling all the stories about swimming. Cheers. Yeah, it was wild. Definitely some foreshadowing with Nathan's race, and then Liam Tancock, nice name drop there with the fastest tempo I've ever seen. Or maybe, I don't know. It seemed like it at the time. Took a lot of strokes, that guy. But I wanted to ask you about, like, you were talking about how the World Cup's changed over time and how many stops there used to be, and it was a 2-day format versus 3. And I mean, as exciting as you make it, mate, and I mean that as authentically as I can, they're not like that exciting a meets, anymore. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, what do you think? Do you think they're better now? What are your thoughts on, like, the format of the World Cup and what's happening? I mean, besides the world records, which are awesome, whenever they happen, I don't know, good, bad. Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse?
I'm not sure if it's better or worse, but it's just different. Like last night, for example, there are 11 races and we had 8 repeat winners from Shanghai.
Right.
So, the best swimmers are winning. So there's 21 races are up for the Triple Crown next week. So potentially World Aquatics are giving out 21 $10,000 bonuses. Wow. So it's just different, but the prize money actually hasn't increased to what it was like 15 years ago. It's still 100K to win, 70 and 30 for second and third overall. There's no individual race winning either. So that's why you saw Kate Douglas not swim the 200 IM last night because she's going, well, $1,500, big whoop. I'm going to try and break the world record in Singapore because her job was done by winning 2 events on the first night, obviously breaking a world record and then doing a 50 fly. Like as a swimming fan, we'd love to see Kate Douglas race more, wouldn't we? So that's where I think a 3-day program is tiring. 3 meets in 3 weeks, maybe it's because I did it previously, but we used to do a 2-day meet, 2 days off, 2-day meet, 2 days off, 2-day meet. So you'd race six out of 10 days in 3 different countries. Yeah. And there was a lot more breakdown. You'd see a lot more poorer performances from people. It was harder to be consistent. Yeah. So it's almost like the World Cup now it's a more focused competition where you can peak for 3 weeks and then now you've got another 6 weeks to prepare for Budapest. But that overall money, they're getting the same amount of money, but they're only doing 3 instead of 6 or 8 legs of competition.
Well, stop charging them so much, man. Come on. They got to afford you.
Yeah, I know. I wish. No, but the other thing being, I was a bit disappointed in Shanghai just with the lack of local Chinese swimmers competing there. There was a lot more Koreans obviously racing in Incheon, and I know in Singapore, I've got 10 of the swimmers that I coach that are going to be competing. So there's going to be, 60 people in the women's 50 freestyle. In Shanghai, there were 2 heats of the women's 50 free. 2 heats of the 50 freestyle. Like just picking that event, for example, when in September, China had their nationals and they got more depth than Australia when it comes to their national level of swimming. Why aren't they giving all these people race experience? Why aren't they letting them race in front of international fans and viewers? And, that's something that I'm excited to see. I'm looking at the world rankings and China have got 5 of the top 10 leading into that Shanghai World Cup and none of them are racing. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So, somehow water aquatics are going to get more of the best swimmers competing at their best as well. Like Kaminga and Martinengi are there. Water aquatics are paying them. They're barely making finals. Kaylee McEwen went home. Kate Douglas pulled out last night. We need to see, these guys are our stars. We need to see, whether they're Olympic champions or world champions. But, why aren't they paying Peter Kutsia, who's having a great series, to race more? Or a lot of these Trenton Julian, a lot of these short course names that only come out at this time of year, but they're the stars right now. So we should be rewarding that.
Yeah, you see, let me talk about the 3 or 4 things I really enjoy about the World Cups. But then it leads to the point you're making. So some of the things I really enjoy is seeing Americans swim short course meters, seeing them adjust it, figure it out, and then smash some world records, right? And that's fun to see. I love seeing the rivalry between the swimmers. I love to see great races. So, Pan doing something different or Thomas winning 100 free out of lane 8 or, what have you. So great races are happening. And I love seeing names I haven't heard of. You got a 17-year-old Australian girl who I never heard of, right? And she's doing great. All these young swimmers I don't know of. But that's the joy of it and the love of the swimming. But I think it comes down to is that we don't have the depth, right? As you just talked about the depth. There's no depth there. You have 200 fly. You have some women going 224. I saw at one point, or 220. It's the depth.
They couldn't even field a full final in Shanghai. There was like six swimmers in it.
But it comes to money, right? But don't they have to pay for themselves? Only 12 swimmers got funding. The rest of them have to pay to go, and it's expensive for somebody from South Africa who's not named Chadwick Close, sponsored by Omega, to fly all the way across to Singapore. And so as soon as money.
Yeah. So from my understanding, Water Aquatics are funding that top 12 big names, which is fair. Again, back in the day, I don't think they funded anybody. Maybe if you won the World Cup the previous year, but I certainly never got any travel funding from them. Some federations will send their swimmers. So the Dutch team might be sending theirs, and South Africa maybe, but probably not. Some of the Australian swimmers may be funded. But for the bigger part, you've got to be self-funded. So like Beta Nelson, for example, a short course specialist, she'd be self-funded. Dylan Carter, Marius Kush, some of these guys who excel in this arena, they'll be self-funded and they need to win that money back in prize money. But there's no excuse for not having the local swimmers there. It doesn't cost anything to send the best Chinese swimmers to the Shanghai World Cup. Right. It literally doesn't. Actually, you should be promoting it. When Sydney was hosting the World Cup, the whole national team, it was compulsory for the whole national team to compete at least at that World Cup, which just made, Libby Trickett was racing, Eamon Sullivan, Ian Thorpe. You sort of, it just drew eyes to the competition. But now, a lot of the Chinese national team did swim in Shanghai, but their depth pieces around that weren't there, which just made the competition incredibly weak from a depth perspective. But you say we don't have the depth. Like there's a ton of swimmers in the world that could be in those finals.
For sure.
You know, all the American pros right now are just grinding away October training. If they could somehow get their way to a short course race, it'd be interesting to see them do that in Australia as well.
It's perfectly lead up to Budapest. I mean, all these swimmers are sharpening their skills for Budapest, right? Which makes complete sense for the European circuit to jump over there and get some training racing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's. I'm not sure how it works. I think because it's short course, some of these federations don't invest as much funding into it. Like there were more people at Mare Nostrum this year because it was long course leading into a European Olympic Games, right? And I think, like we heard Casper say in your podcast, Netherlands are only sending 8 swimmers to Budapest, even though they've got a much deeper team. So that wipes them out of all relays. Yeah. So they, you know, do they not have enough money left over on an Olympic year to be competitive in, you know, what is a world championship event or a World Aquatics World Cup? I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me.
I don't quite understand why I've never understood why some of these governing bodies don't look at a world championships and the medals that are awarded at those world championships with the same, because it's, what they should be caring about is how marketable is this event and our achievements at this event so that we can get more sponsors, so that we can get more money to help send more people to these races, help grow the sport, like develop our younger athletes. Fine if some of the others are, you know, they're just coming off of Paris and they're in a down part of the season, fine, but Trenton Julian wasn't there and so he's able to come up and shine. He's not an up and comer, but I mean, point is, like, you know, you create more opportunities for other people to go and compete on the world stage. It is a world championships after all. But I mean, you as somebody who had excelled in the 50-meter distance, and myself as well, I had the American record in the 50 butterfly for a while, but nobody cared. No, like we didn't have a trials event for that for me to go and compete at that Rome World Championships, even though I was the fastest American butterflyer by a full second, because USA Swimming didn't care, and they still don't. Even today, they did add it to the trials, but they only create one qualifying spot, which I get for roster limits. But the point is, like, there's some competitions and events that we have that for some reason the old guard doesn't treat as like the same level of achievement. And I would argue that somebody like Jordan Crooks, to use an example, or, you know, Kate Douglas obviously has success in both sizes of pool, but you have some people that are really fast swimmers, they're good underwater, or they're good at a shorter format, and like that is elite, and they're better than maybe their long course counterparts. And I think it's fair to recognize that, and for the governing bodies to also recognize that level of skill and treat it as such, celebrate it.
Okay, I totally agree with you. Yeah. You know, I never trained for the 50 backstroke my whole career, or even, you know, I would say majority of my career I trained long course. It's just that I had success in that event and in that short course pool more consistently over my career. But why doesn't, you know, your question is why doesn't the governing body, you know, acknowledge that and almost fund that a little bit more? Because there's nothing in it for them. They're getting rewarded on long course world championship medals leading into the Olympics and then Olympics results, from what I know.
Why? But that's what I don't understand, because it's still a world championship gold medal. They're accepting. I mean, I don't know. I don't see all the back end of it, but to me, on the surface, it is a world championship gold medal. You are the world champion, and that sure looks, I can tell you from experience, that having world record on the resume sounds the same to anybody else outside of the sport of swimming, you know? So like nobody asked me if I had a world record from short course. They don't know what that means, but world record sure stood out. So like, if I'm one of these governing bodies trying to sell, you know, and get more funding and support for our sport, that's the bit that I don't understand. Because on the surface, to most people, they don't know the difference.
It's interesting, like, in Europe, short course swimming is big. It's way bigger than it is in Australia and the US. When I raced in Europe, I got more recognized from my name, from my achievements in the short course pool than, like, significantly more than back in Australia. They have a European short course every December, and then every other year, and then they alternate that with a world short course. So that's their winter season. Like, they respect it. They send their best swimmers there. We've seen Noah Ponte be ripping short course races over the past 2 years. It's just Australia and the US. But I think what will change is it sounds like these 50-meter form strokes are going to become an Olympic event for LA. That seems to be the word at the moment. So I think that's got to recognize newer events, obviously, but also they've got to start recognizing the skill format of short course meters, because more of especially the sprinters that are going to be getting success in those 50-meter form strokes are exactly the ones that are going to be doing the World Cup. Chin Haiyang, Shimanovic, Isaac Cooper, Noah Ponte, Castagnet. They're none of those guys are individual Olympic medalists, right? But they're the people that are going to be the beneficiaries of those 50 form strokes becoming Olympic events.
Why do you think World Aquatics made the change to limit the number of swims you can have at a World Cup meet, to only have it in 3 weeks, to kind of keep it in the same geography? I think in 2022 they started off in Berlin, then they went to Toronto and Indy, but then they tend to stay in the same continent. Is it based on how busy the schedule is generally around the world, and they only can get 3 weeks of swimmers to dedicate? Is it a money thing? What do you think the reason was? I mean, I would love to see Leon swim 100 free, for instance. Like, what if they could swim like 8 events?
Yeah. No, I don't have the answer to that. I can only think that it's something different. They're just changing that, and I guess a 3-day meet, they're allowing for people to swim 3 events. If you could score points in 4 or 5 events in terms of the way they currently score the event, with obviously 10 points for a win and then those bonus aqua points, most people don't have 4 or 5 events. They can just get towards 3. But I know what you're saying in terms of, I'd love to see Marchand race other events, but he almost can't afford to do that, because you need to win that triple crown and win the same event in all 3 races. So he was entered in the 200 free yesterday, but he didn't do the heat. He did the 100 free here, but didn't make the final. So he tried, but there's not really an incentive on his personal part to win a race once. If you're going to win the race, you got to win it at all 3 stops. But off the back of 2016. There were 8 World Cup legs, and from memory, it was started like 2 weeks after the Olympics. So a lot of the swimmers came straight from Rio. Some of them didn't go back to Australia. Obviously, we're pretty isolated, and they just went straight to Europe because the first leg was in Paris. So like, they've done it before. I don't know how much money it costs to host one of these meets, or how many hosts they have up their sleeve, but Asia didn't have any. Didn't host any events 2 years ago when it was short course, so maybe it's sort of a taking your turns type of policy there. But I'd like to see more. Yeah,
I mean, remember in 2012, right after 2012, the top sprinters in the world went to 2-lane 25-yard pool in Palo Alto and competed for a $10,000 cash prize. And it was a head-to-head meet. And it was George against Josh Schneider in the final. But Tony was there, and everybody did. They all of them are racing. It was right after the Olympics. We need more of that stuff. Brian, you had a question about points.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say, the point thing. I understand the structure and how it works, logically. But as a fan, it's hard to keep track of throughout the meet. And so I don't know what the solution is to it, but I wanted to know if you have any thoughts on the ability. I imagine it's hard even doing broadcasting to be able to explain it, to be able to calculate it, because when we're watching another sport, you can sit there and go, okay, I can see how many goals each team has scored on the screen, or how many points they've scored, and I know how much touchdown is worth in the scenario and everything. But it's at the end of the 22 World Cup when you had Dylan and Nick Fink down to the wire, trying to understand who's going to win. Trying to calculate the points that they needed and translate that into times that they needed to go and finishes was how's anybody else going to watch this? And I'm not necessarily suggesting that swimming is going to transcend swimming purists to get to the average fan, but even for swimming purists to really be able to know the lingo, I don't think that we're there yet. So I'm just curious, I don't know, what do you think about all that?
And let me jump in there, because it was complicated, because in that particular example, I think Sonny Trigg figured out that Nick Fink had to go a 2 or whatever, and if he went fast in 2 or whatever, he wins the overall crown, and that time was worked out, and the commentator didn't know at the time. Forgive me if it was you, Bobby, in 2022, but yeah. that made it really exciting. I found out that,
Yeah, it's a weird one. Again, I don't know what the perfect solution is, but where in terms of the world's population, probably at the pointy end of the swim nerds in the world. How's the average couch fan going to understand like world aquatics points? So like in the call last night, when I realized, when Kate Douglas didn't do the IM, I got up, that massive PDF of short course women's world aquatics point score and figured out what Regan Smith needed to do to leapfrog Kate, and was hoping that I was right. But, and she pretty much just had to get under 2 minutes, but it would have looked bad if I got that wrong. But it's better than, if Regan Smith wins this gold medal tonight, she wins the inch and stop of the World Cup, because we know she's going to win, right? So we are putting a time on there, but, it doesn't need to be a bit more ISL based, where now there becomes a 2 minutes 0.1 line on the screen that Regan needs to beat in terms of to leapfrog Kate. I'm not too sure, but it stops that situation. Like, we used to see Katinka just swim everything, because the women's, look, on the World Cup, women's swimming's not as deep as it is on the men's side. So she could do an 800 free into a 400 IM, into a 50 back, into a 200 fly, and win in mediocre times. But there's no incentive for the swimmers to do that now, because you're not even getting the $1,500 prize win for that race. So again, it is geared towards 3 events and 3 world-class swims.
Yeah. You brought up not knowing if you were going to be right. Have you ever had a foot and mouth moment commentating?
Nothing that I can particularly remember right now.
All right.
Again, at the World Championships, Mike McCann's the lead caller, and he's next to me, so he's doing the important starts and finishes and all the outtakes that get taken up for the highlights package and for social media, and I'm more just giving that color. Now I'm doing it for the first time and realize how difficult it is having to announce all 8 competitors before they come out, and having to call them as they dive in off the blocks and try and nail the finish as well. But so far, so good in terms of having an embarrassing moment like that.
Well, we did have an audience member at Social Kick Swim on Instagram who suggested that the best line ever in a broadcast was Mr. Fly and Die himself, referring to Trenton Julian.
And then he wins that race.
Yeah.
I mean, that swim Julian had in Melbourne, I think it was 2 years ago, short course, was like probably more wild than any of his other 200 flies we've ever seen, well in front of world record pace, and then literally faded to come 6th or 7th. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, as I relax into this position a little bit more, again, if people at home listening don't know, like I'm in a studio by myself in Singapore. I have the feed in front of me. I have exactly what you guys have, and a heat sheet, and I'm trying to commentate this thing exactly like I'm there. So, at this point, it's been a lot of fun, but it's some of those races are pretty difficult to call.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because Atto Bolden does that sometimes for the Diamond Leagues when he comments in Florida from his old home studio. And I was wondering, do you feel like you can focus more once you do your prep and you just focus on what's going on? Or are you missing a lot of the stuff, not just during the race? Like, there's Michael clapping Leon just breaking his record, and you can make a note about that. Or maybe at lunch you pass by Kate Douglas and she told you something that you can drop in your commentary. Are you missing that sort of like more visceral, notes you can add to the commentary?
Yeah, definitely. When you're at the events and you're talking to the swimmers and you're talking to the coaches as well, you're feeling the intensity and the vibe in the area. That helps so much when you're talking about trying to provide an environment for the viewer back at home to understand what the swimmers are feeling at that point. And obviously, as a swimmer myself, that's sort of what you feed off, So I'm calling John Mason every other day just to say what's the vibe, like what happened to Kate, what Chinese swimmers are continuing on to do the circuit. Just trying to get information from John, who's doing a fantastic job in Shanghai and Incheon. Like, I don't think anybody can host a swimming event like John Mason can. So he revs up the crowd, and he's a big swim fan as well. He's very factual. He's a people person. Obviously, he loves to interview the swimmers and get to know them. But that's a tough gig when you're in non-English speaking countries, But for one example, yesterday, like the scoreboard broke at the venue. So I'm calling that women's 100 fly, and the Finnish girl, Laura Lahtinen, wins in a tight one, and she looks at the board and she's just like confused, like doesn't know what's happening, whereas I'm excited calling the finish. And then I sort of intuitively knew like the scoreboard mustn't be working because all the top three had no idea what happened. So then you obviously become trying to tell the story for the viewer and go through the results and what the swimmer might be feeling at that point in time. But it's more difficult as well. Like, that 15, 20 minutes before you go on air, or even the 1 hour before you go on air, when you're doing a bit of study and reading, there's no one else around to talk about the event, Right. It's pretty much just me. So there's no atmosphere with what I'm doing at the moment. So hopefully it's coming across fairly excitable for everybody listening. But in Singapore next week, obviously I live in Singapore now, coaching over here and moved over here 2 years ago with my family. So I'll be at the venue next week, and it should be a lot more lively.
Yeah, well, give us a call. Give us a call next time, and we'll just hop on with you for the hour before and pregame, and then send you off, because we talk for half an hour before we record podcasts usually, and just get the vibe set.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's just sort of like I look at it from, I can put the athlete hat on, or the coach's hat on, or even, the commentator's hat, in terms of what do I need to portray here for the viewer, but what's the armchair fan talking about here? Like, what are you guys excited to see? I'm excited to see Pan's 800, but you might be excited to see, Checon's 100 backstroke. I don't know. Like, we've all got different interests into what we want to see, right?
Yeah.
I was going to say kudos to you for how is your experience over the years, but how does your brain make the quick decisions to say what you say on camera in real time as it's happening? I remember hearing you comment on the 50 back of Isaac, and how Isaac, he just didn't have good 50 back, yesterday. Anyway, he hit the lane rope coming back. He was too deep on the start, all that kind of stuff. And you picked up on that right away. The 8 swimmers on a little monitor that you have to look at, and you're still able to see these things and draw attention to it, and then mention it at the same time, calling who comes up first, the split, how is your brain working to filter out this and give us information for not just the Brian and Luke's who know swimming, but my wife, my kids,
I don't know. I guess, there is experience. So I've done world champs for the last 7 years, but in saying that, we're talking 7 competitions. It's not like I've been doing it for 20 or 30 years, but something, as a coach now that I talk to my swimmers, I transitioned straight into coaching, like literally the day I retired from swimming. I actually took a year off swimming to coach in South Africa before that as well. So those two things have always gone hand in hand for me. And I didn't learn coaching out of a textbook. I don't have a university degree, but if something looks good, like I can see that pretty quickly. I can comment on that. I can see somebody's body position. I could see underwater off the turn. I could see that Isaac was going to hit the lane rope, I don't know. It just sort of stands out to me when 8 guys are going straight and one guy's maybe slightly off center. I can pick up on that pretty quickly. It's pretty hard to put that into a call when it's 22 seconds,
That's right.
But in that race in particular, I knew if Isaac got a good start and was first to 25, he could, potentially challenge that World Cup record. But he won in Doha back in February and hit the lane rope literally 3 times and went like 24-2. So he's got top end speed and talent, but he's susceptible to making mistakes at this point in his career. So I knew he was deep off the start, didn't win the start, which means one mistake potentially leads to another mistake as well. So my eyes were on him in that race. But with the other ones as well, if it's interesting to me, it's probably interesting to the people watching as well, because, I spoke about armchair fans as well, but most people watching a World Cup feed at whatever hour of the night it is for you guys, you're probably already invested into the sport. You're a master swimmer, a coach, an up-and-coming swimmer, a parent, a friend. So you probably have some idea about swimming. You don't just want to hear first, second, third all the time, which is a big part of being a commentator. But if something stands out, I've sort of made a note to myself that I have to talk about that, because if I miss it and if I see it and it's sitting in my head and I don't talk about it, you don't really have the time to go back and refer to it 5 minutes later. You have to talk about it on the spot.
Yeah, sorry, I know you have a follow-up, Luke, but I just wanted to comment that I think you hit on something that's really helping a lot of commentary take off in the U.S. is these former professional football players who are bringing this in-game perspective, like Tony Romo and Greg Olson, the tight end, former tight end, who are bringing this, like, that what they see is different than what the average person sees. And personally, I think that's like a really helpful additive to helping make the sport more relatable, because we're sitting here listening to the expert go, "Oh, what do you see?" And I've had friends who don't know swimming at all watch a competition with me or watch the Olympics, and then they're kind of hyped to have me explain to them in advance, what is it that you're like excited about on this race? Because I'm going to list 8 things coming into the final of the 100 backstroke where, the commentary is going to focus on the swimmer in lane 4.
Yeah, I think, NFL's built on that as well, because it's stop start. It's a play, an execution, and then an analysis like straight away off the back of that. And I think, something I'm proud of, like, I think I do a good job at World Championships of those slow-mo replays, and just because you're getting to see Dressel off the dive, or you're getting to see Petey's breakout, and you're seeing a slow-mo of that 50 fly finish where it's just timing on the wall. We see so many races won and lost in the 50 fly and breaststroke, and it's just such a tight finish. But, in terms of the average fan sort of seeing that and understanding that, like, they don't know, why is Caleb Dressel better than everybody else? Is it just because he's more muscular and, more experienced? Or, and we've got 10 reasons why that guy potentially can win the race as well. But it's hard to do at this point, like, by yourself as well on the World Cups. But I think, it's almost like having a YouTube show or a YouTube channel where you really just dissect each of those races, which a lot of people have these days as well. It's a good way to just educate, younger swimmers and the swimming community.
Right.
Well, it's something that we try to do, is try and give the backstory behind the swimmers and the athletes, so they can, because I think that's what makes swimming so popular at the Olympics, that, people like NBC or ABC for you guys would do good backstories behind the swimmer going into the games, and you feel a character and you get into it. And so in swimming, we love swimming because it's emotionally rewarding, but also it's like swimming rewarding. Like, oh my God, that was such a great swim swimming wise, or great swim feeling wise, a Mona McSherry versus a Pan 100 free, right, at the Olympics. These particular games, like, I remember John Mason, who we're looking forward to having on the show soon. He's going to join us. You're right, he's amazing. He's a third place young kid from Switzerland who was so happy to be on the podium, and he was very glad to be there. So you had that emotional that I connected with, or I connected with Chad looking across and racing that way, or Regan finally going, hell yeah, I got that record. Those emotions I love. And so those are my favorite swimming emotional stuff. And my favorite swimming stuff was like Noe coming off the wall and catching Leon underwater. And I am, that's like unbelievable swimming from a swimming wise. Bobby, what were your favorite swimming moments, and then your favorite like emotional moment, feeling moment? Like, that was an amazing swim. That was such a lovely moment so far.
So far on the tour right now, I think, like Ponty's world record in the heat was shocking, maybe, well, to us and to me. I don't know about for him and his team, whether he was expecting something like that. But, I think all of those world records, and I think we'll see more from a technical point of view. That's, you're literally seeing a world record. No one's ever swam that event faster than that. So that's, what the tour is for and what we want to see as coaches and progression of the sport. In terms of the emotional side, I'm not too sure. I think it'd be great if Kaylee was still here to see potentially Regan beat her a few times and grab those world records. And, similar to her long course world record at US trials, like, she claims that pretty quick. Like, she looks like she's got a target on time, a target time in her head. She's claiming that thing as soon as she touches the wall. But, this is the thing with the World Cup coverage. Do we want to see more of Thierry Bollin, the Swiss guy, on the podium for the first time, and a lot of younger faces and names, and hear them speak, which some of them speak really well and some of them don't speak very well at all? Or do we want to see just the repeat interviews with the same champions and the same winners? Like, what storyline is going to sell the sport more? Because at the end of the day, like you said, Olympics is so big because so many countries and host broadcasters put so much energy into that highlights package and the backstory in weeks and months in advance. But when we're coming, I don't know what they do in Diamond League as well, but how do you do that in this sort of format on a 90-minute broadcast? I'd love to know what Regan's been doing since Paris, in terms of her training and what were her intentions coming into this meet. What does she want to do? And we're seeing a guy like Boland that from Switzerland swim PBs here, break national records and get World Cup medals for the first time. But do we have the time to expand on that in a broadcast? And is that interesting enough for people? But I don't know.
Well, we need
maybe
you
if Snoop Dogg did it.
As well,
600K a day.
We need you to do an NFL.
600.
Yeah, that's how much he was making. 600 a day.
My God.
600K a day.
Yeah.
Dang.
I'll do it for half that.
Well, you drive a hard bargain.
Yeah. No, other sports are doing it really well. Formula One, the Drive to Survive on Netflix. At NFL,
oh yeah,
has that Hard Knock series. And now track and field has sprinting, and there's a season 2 coming out. So
I love that.
5 sprinters up to the Olympics, and now what happened at the Olympics, and that's how you fall in love with the characters, but in the sport more. And swimming had it. I mean, Prime did a thing with Chalmers and these folks 3 years ago, right? And that was
good.
But that was on. We need more of that kind of stuff narrated by somebody like you who knows it.
Oh yeah. Well, I'd love to be involved, obviously, but I've had a few interesting conversations about this because, like, those documentaries and Breakpoint, the tennis one as well, was good, and that's that's the answer to what I was saying. That's giving you the backstory before we actually go to the major competition or the World Cup meet and watch these swimmers. So Cam McAvoy's got an idea. I think he might have spoken to you guys about it, like doing a combine style sprint. What would we call it, like test sort of series in terms of a lot of dry land exercises and breaking that 50 meter up into a dive 15 and a 10 meter segments and all of that sort of stuff, and getting to know the backstory behind the world's best sprinters around that, which I think, even just the swimming community, everybody would watch that, let alone new people to the sport. Yeah. And I look at it like, I sort of identify more as probably a mid-distance swimmer, and having the best distance swimmers in the world do the standard set 3100s on 130, best average. Like, imagine just getting 10 guys in a 10-lane pool. We're talking like the Olympic final plus 1 or 2 other training animals, and just lining them up and having a live, like, that's a 45-minute show. Like, what coach or mid-distance swimmer, former swimmer or current swimmer wouldn't want to watch 3100s from Pau Chineri, Wellbrock, Romanchuk, Bobby Fink? You throw David Johnston in there. You might throw Carson Foster as well. Like, whoever's got the biggest engine, and just have like John Mason hosting it and somebody commentating it. Like, there's a 45, 60-minute show that would be huge. Pay these guys 10 grand, put a jammer on them, let them have some rest, bring them out to Berlin or something in a pool and put on a show. Like, that would be really cool. I don't know that I
want to watch 30. I mean, 30's a lot.
Well, whatever it could be, but that was just an example. Like everybody in Australia grew up doing that set. Like, everybody has done 3100s on 130 at some point in their life. The other one, the standard 7-200 step test, whatever set it could be 850s max on 5 minutes, lactate production, no swim down. So just have guys throwing up, competing against each other, having some fun with it, talking about the backstory. Like, there's some eyes that would watch that.
Well, it's about what you're talking about is about creating suspense. There was a distance swimmer we talked to about this, about doing gamification like that too. I remember talking to Cam about it as well. And I think that there's something about like creating suspense. This is a prize. This is what's at stake. They're going to compete for it. And there's going to be like progress throughout the competition that you see. Now, I don't know if we can hold our attention for 30 minutes or whatever, but if you could do it for a portion of that, and yes, have, John, you said John Mason, and before you said it, I was thinking, that'd be awesome, because he's great at that, the energy in the crowd. And the other thing that I'll call out too is, like, even at Diamond League meets, like, the lighting's better. When I'm picturing an event like this, I'm thinking about what's that TV show? At least in the US, they call it Wipeout, or like, it's a spinoff of American Ninja Warrior, and some of these competitions where it's like, it's at night, it's on a stage, there's lots of lights and everything, and like I don't know what the production costs, but some of these pools look awful on camera. You have to stare at them.
Yeah,
but they look terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting the same feed as you guys. It gets better somehow. It gets better as the meet goes on, but that's where the sport's at the moment, and that's where it was at 15 years ago as well. But we've got to. Swimming's got to be. It's got to be more consistent content in terms of putting it on TV more often, and then it's got to be more entertaining. So it's, the Olympics is sport entertainment. That's what's going to bring the money into it. So for sprinters on a race that takes 20 seconds, like we've seen what track and field have done with that sprint series on Netflix. That's the key. Like every major sport's done that. We have to jump on board and invest into producing something that's gonna grow the sport like that. When Amazon did it, like you said, I love that series. But then it stopped. And when Amazon was hosting meets in Australia, they were huge. We had massive LED scoreboards at Adelaide. The production quality was very, very high, but then they just left after 2 years. So I guess they're not getting a return on their investment there in terms of the sport. So there's got to someone's got to think outside the box, or pretty much copy the other sports and get involved.
Well, to copying the other sports, track had that showdown with Mondo Duplantis and Karsten Warholm racing for 100 meter, 2 off events, a pole vaulter against a 400 meter hurdler, and then they at one of their Diamond League meets, and this could be happening at a Swimming World Cup right now. You have, well, let's pick somebody who's not as rangy. I don't know, but it was like you got Marchand racing Kate Douglas and some random whatever. I don't know, like he's doing breaststroke and she's racing butterfly. I don't know, but like
they did that. They did that in Australia a while ago. I think it was like women's backstroke up against men's breaststroke over 100 meters.
Okay, it's pretty close.
That sort of lines up. I'm just trying to think of what the other one potentially was, but again, it's more racing at that point for the world's best swimmers. But that track and field one was interesting. Even if you're not watching it live, that replay because it's a 30-second clip
and that's what I mean.
Everywhere. It's everywhere.
Because what you're watching at the World Cup right now, the clips that you're going to see are the world records, and then everybody's going to watch the showdown between Leon and Kate Douglas for whatever it is, and it's about the clippable moments that are drawing attention to it, creating more excitement, more buzz.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much, I'm a bit disappointed that they can't take my commentary for some of those clips on social media, but all the highlights and everything, like even, a 400 freestyle on social media, they're only putting 60 seconds of that race on there, they're only looking at the start, middle, finish. So everything's short attention span at this point. But I don't follow the Diamond League, but what's the prize money on offer and how many Diamond League meets are there? Like, where is track getting all this money compared to swimming? And how can they win? As an Olympic sport, could you argue that we're bigger?
Everybody has feet. That's why. Track. No, seriously. Like, track has always had more money, and it's because everyone in the world wears shoes. Not everybody swims. So these athletes are far more marketable. Everybody can relate to running and jogging a little bit more. It's just a much bigger sport. I don't have any stats to back that up, but I mean, it's just, so to me, that's kind of the key difference. I don't know how much they're making.
Yeah. Yeah, but how much? So there's 1.2 million on offer this year over three legs. But what's Diamond League offering total? Like, are we talking 5 mil, 10 mil, or?
Let's look.
We need to ask Arthur Walden on this.
I remember seeing years ago, it might have been around Rio, they were getting like $40,000 a win on the in terms of a track race. I don't know about a field. Yeah. But even the world record $10,000 bonus, it was the same in the mid 2000s at 10,000. Like that world record could be like, it could be 25,000 right now. And, you're not talking a lot of output here when there's only 3 to 5 world records being broken per circuit.
Right? This is their long course. Diamond League is their long course. They have an indoor circuit, which is their short course, which is, it's just, I think it's less money for indoor.
Yeah, so it says total prize money per individual event is between 30 and 50,000 at each regular season meet, and between 60 and 100,000 at the season-ending meet. So that's a payout between first and eighth place. So like the winner.
And this is
like
field
30.
events. This is field events as well, right? So there's a lot of events. Like there's got to be more track and field events than swimming events, and they're offering,
for sure,
I don't know, what would you call that? Almost 10 times more money, total prize money. So, I mean, I look at if the prize money was doubled, how many more people would do this year's World Cup circuit? If it was 5 times, how many people would do it?
Well, look how many did the ISL.
times.
Money talks.
Yeah.
When ISL was paying out money, I mean, when they thought that they were getting paid money, there were a lot of people. You got the best.
No, look, what ISL did was it proved that people will watch swimming on a consistent basis, not revolving around faces and names, but like teams.
Yep.
Like people were watching that. Whether I don't think the swimmers were getting paid huge amounts of money. They were getting good money because they were doing the World Cup and ISL at the same time. That's why they got paid. ISL's money was very similar to World Cup money, and there's obviously rumors and stories that go around that, but also they did the smart thing by having half the league was American. They hosted meets in America. So that's where you're getting all the other, again, the armchair swim fans, and you're getting the world's best athletes. Like, again, the 2 World Cups 2 years ago that were in Indy, and where else were they? No, I was in Toronto and Indy, wasn't it?
Toronto.
You had a ton of American swimmers do that, which made the standard so much higher.
You know what swimming racing doesn't have, and it's a big part of our sport. Bobby, if I jumped in the water right now, I would trash talk you to no end. You're younger than me, you're faster than me, you'll kick my butt, but I'm gonna talk you down. I'm gonna race you. Brian teases me all the time. It's part of our sport. It's part of our training. Again, the blocks. I mean, it's not Victor Davis style where I spit in your lane, But I would give you some talks, and we don't. It's as though we're restricted, or like we have to be all good. The ISL had a bit of that, right? We had the Coleman Short giving a little talk to, I forgot who it was at the time. And I think some of that is nice. I love see Trenton and Chad going back and forth, and in a friendly rivalry and respect. But it's that. I respect Brian when I kick his butt in...
Nothing. That never happens.
In chat.
I don't know. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. The other thing with, if there was some sort of Netflix series on swimming is, do we have the personalities like Sprint and like Point Break and Drive to Survive? Do we have the personality to actually promote this?
I know.
Because when we do have an outlier like that, that's a big talker or whatnot, and doesn't back it up, like everybody jumps on them. Lochte was that guy, not as a big talker, but on his outside life, and everybody jumped on him. Michael Andrew, everybody jumps on him. So we maybe as a sport, we're not promoting that sort of personality. Look at Ian Thorpe, didn't want to show his personality when he was swimming. So I don't know if can we get a series right now revolving around Douglas, Smith, and Marchand and Ponty? Like, would that draw eyes, or do we need to see more from these guys, or do we need to give them the opportunity to show their personality? Maybe that's a better way to put it. But yeah, in those other sports, you definitely have it. But I think the more eyes are watching the sport, the more viewership, the more followers they get, the more money's on offer, more personalities will come out. If people start to see that, a Conor McGregor personality gets rewarded, then maybe we see more Conor McGregors swimming.
Yeah,
Somebody like Isaac Cooper would do it.
Oh, Isaac would for sure. Yeah. I have a question for you, Bobby. You made one mistake.
I mean, on that, Cooper got beaten the other night, again, more so because of his own mistakes, but he spoke glowingly of Peter Kutsia at the interview and on social media afterwards as well, which is a big growing up part for him, and showed really good sportsmanship, but probably behind the scenes he's thinking very differently. But I don't know how, again, it'd be that sprint series really showed it would be a really intense call room area when those guys literally hate each other.
Oh, totally. And what I meant by bringing him up is Isaac is the type of person who would be really transparent, open, talk to a camera, let them come in and just warm up, follow him around. He's just like that kind of, this is what I'm doing, and this is good for swimming. He's just like that kind of vibe. Whereas some of the other names you mentioned, maybe no. They're not going to be that.
But
imagine
like, back in your day, Brian, having cameras in the call room or when you're putting a suit on around like Target, Cielo, yourself, George.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, even Chad as well. Like it'd be crazy for people to see what the self-doubt going through their head, the arrogance, the ego, the aggression. Yeah, not many people in the world have ever seen that side of those people.
Right, and swimming needs that. They need, and I think there's a mindset shift amongst the top athletes to be like, okay, there's just going to be cameras everywhere, and I mean, maybe not while they're putting a suit on, but there's going to be cameras all around to help document these moments, because at the end of the day, if we tell this story, we need to be able to tell this story so that the sport can grow.
Mm-hmm. So tell me the answer to this one question. It's a mistake you made. You made it a couple of times, Bobby. There was a guy who got up to swim. He looked like Leon Marchand, looked just like him, but he was wearing a Korean cap like yesterday. So it was obviously not Leon. I think he was also the same guy who wore a Dressel cap a few weeks ago. What's going on with these cap changes? Why are they wearing different caps?
I don't know. I think it's just those guys trying to be funny. And I get it. Like as a swimmer, I wore a pink cap just because it was different and on different races, and would probably do the same. But last night we saw like multiple people were wearing different caps. So Chekon had a Lorenzo Mora cap on, Stakowski had a Kutsia cap on, and that's also difficult when they're coming, first and second, being close to each other. It's not very professional. I'm able to call the faces and the names for what I see, but World Aquatics probably need to put a stop to that, because what if you had 8 guys racing in? They're sitting in the call room and they just throw a cap and just pick a different one. That would just be getting a little bit too ridiculous. But also at this level, like they're wearing Nike hoodies instead of any sort of resemblance of a national team uniform. Why do they need to be representing France at the World Cup? Why can't Marchand be racing his club team and getting paid for that? Why can't he be representing the Nike swim team if he's going to wear Nike or his own personal sponsor and get paid for that as well? Because he's not wearing a French cap, he's not wearing a French uniform. So we all know he's French anyway. What difference does it make? But in terms of the cap, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. But as a purist, it's funny from a swimming point of view, but as a purist of the sport, it's if Marchand breaks a world record wearing a different cap, it's not going to look good on.
Yeah, they get the images, pictures of him celebrating, and it says,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think first of all, Luke, I think the true answer to your question is because they can. Because when you go to a world games meet, you can't. You're not allowed to wear. It's like it'd be a uniform violation. You got to wear the cap that your country issued you. So,
but I mean, could you wear it with a different name? Which should I don't know. I don't know what their purpose is other than just being funny, but
I don't think so. I don't think that you can wear a cap of another nation. I think you might be able to wear it of a different name.
Yeah, but it's same country. But
I mean, number one, compliance is like having the sponsor logo in the right direction and all that. But all right, man. We'll end it with a few quick ones. What's the hardest race in swimming?
1500 for sure. That race is a war.
All right. Olympic gold or world record?
I've got one of them, and I'm not completely satisfied, so I'd say an Olympic gold. That would stay with you forever.
All right. We watched Leon Marchand do a 500 freestyle at NCAA's the other year and go 15 meters underwater off of every wall. Can you imagine going 15 meters underwater off every turn in a 400-meter short course freestyle? No, I don't know. I don't know how he does that. One thing I talked about is he's obviously fast underwater, but his underwater endurance is better than Phelps and Lochte, anybody else that we've seen to do that in 400 and 500 meter races. So he also he takes a lot of kicks, so he spends a lot of energy under there, but it doesn't seem to really destroy his legs or his oxygen levels. So I'd love to see some of the underwater sets he does with Bolt. They must be dirty. Who's the best underwater kicker that you've ever seen? Or
I'll go outside the box. I'll say, Stanislav Donets from Russia. He was insane in the suit, after the suit as well. He was slow off to react off the start, but his turns, he just hit the bottom of the pool and just had these monster dolphin kicks. Wow. Arkady Vyachinen as well, probably pre-suits was top notch, but I'm big on that as well. Like I'd love to see 2025s underwater and talking about our show and see who holds up best, because I've seen Chad do some crazy things at training with his underwaters when he was in his best shape as well. Kenneth Toe was electric, and now you've seen Ponty beat Marchand in 100 IM off those walls. So underwater kick is a different sport in itself.
Yeah. What's the hardest set that you've ever done?
The only times I ever threw up at training was a 2K time trial and you sprinted at the end. So I would say that. But in terms of, so I did a fair few of those when, I was a distance swimmer for the middle part of my career as well. But any of those like thresholdy 100 sets, whether it was 31s or three sets of 10 or 3 sets of 8, and you're pretty much maxing out on that last round, I enjoyed them. But they were always tough on a Monday afternoon. You knew you're preparing your body to go to war.
It's so funny. We did those on Mondays as well. They were like a Turetsky set. They came from Turetsky from the AIS back in the early 90s. Yeah.
What's the most money?
It's weird. Hearing the US guys talk about the hardest set they've ever done. It's all these crazy 8,000 meter main sets and Janet Evans sets and everything else. Like in Australia, we don't do probably as much like that real low aerobic volume, like super high volume, unless you're an open water swimmer. But the threshold stuff coming from, what Perkins, Hackett, Thorpe and everybody else did is a staple like on a Monday afternoon. And everybody's got to jump through that hoop.
Got to do it. Yeah. What's the most money you ever made at a meet?
Well, in that world record for back in 2008, I got $11,500 for that 50-meter effort, which was cool.
That's pretty good.
And won a few other events at that leg. But in 2013 World Cup, I made again over 8 stops, but I think I made 110,000, which was good. That was definitely my best year. Would have been great to do that 4 years in a row, but I got injured the next year. And that was for getting
hop back in.
That was for getting third as well. So,
jeez, yeah. Well, you certainly did haul in a lot of medals. Speaking of somebody who's been to a lot of races and done a lot of them, what's the best race that you've ever seen live?
Well, Marchand's 400 IM in Fukuoka last year was like the perfect moment. With Phelps in the stand, and there was so much anticipation leading into that race to break the oldest world record in the books. And he's like, for all the anticipation and expectation on Marchand in the last 2 years, like he's delivered every time at NCAAs, world champs, breaking a world record, winning Olympic golds. So that was incredible. And that crowd in Fukuoka was really good as well. In terms of maybe like a draw dropping swim, I put probably Pan's 100 free world record from Doha. That was one that was unexpected. And also putting out there when Titmus beat Ledecky in Guangzhou for the first time, 2019. That was, that'll be looked back as a changing of the guard, I think. She just pulls up to her with 25 to go, and Ledecky had no answer. She almost just rolled into the wall. Titmus came up and went straight past.
Was that the race that Boxall went nuts for the first time?
No, that was Tokyo. So that was he probably did go nuts, but it wasn't on camera.
Yeah.
But Tokyo's the one that got everybody's attention. But that's just team.
We had a couple of your swimmers write us on Instagram. So what's the most annoying thing that one of them can do?
Probably not having any idea of what we're actually doing in the set when they go after talking about it for 5 minutes, which means I was just talking to a brick wall.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, last one is that how often do they get any social kick in the workout?
A little bit in that skip in the warm-up. I'm not sure if it would be social kick, but a little bit at the start. But we only have 90-minute sessions, so there's not much social kick at the end of training unless it's a real recovery session. But we'll try and put a little bit more of that in there.
Yeah, well, good. Thank you, and you should, and we advocate for it always. But also as someone who just said that you can, there's not a ton of that like light aerobic, that it's a lot more quality. You can get that done in 90 minutes. You can get a great workout in 90 minutes. What do you need? Come on.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, hey man, I want to just sincerely watching your coverage, but then also just like being able to talk to Luke about it beforehand and John when we knew you were coming on. It's like, doing this, it's a way for us to imagine what like commentary would be like, and when we talk about it, we're like, oh my gosh, like, when you think about what would I do if I were in their shoes, watching some of your clips and then hearing your coverage in some of the races, including some of that you mentioned, it's like what you do is not easy, is flawlessly executed, and you can tell that you've put the prep in, but that you're like executing at a really high level. And I just want to give some recognition to that, because as somebody who is consuming it and hearing it and living it with you and through your voice, it's really good, and we appreciate it. So keep it up, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the wrap. No, it's something that I enjoy. I think I can relate to, again, swimmers, coaches, fans, master swimmers, everybody. So, I'm hopeful I can do this for a long time to come, because I just absolutely love it, and hope that people back at home are hearing the passion and the expertise that that I have for the sport, and they can just feed off that.
Without a doubt. Well, we'll keep on following. Thanks, Bobby, for coming on. That's it for this episode of Social Kick. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.